No sabía si había terminado, perdón.
Apologies, I wasn't sure if it had finished. Thank you very much. I just wanted to welcome all of you to be able to start this event. I am Pablo Gonzalo, responsible for culture at Fundación Telefónica. We are delighted of having this event here at Fundación and also to be collaborators of the festival since its creation. We have been working with them for 7 editions, and it is a great pleasure. We have the quality of the festival and then, of course, the objectives that it fosters with regard to the presence of women in the film industry. We are going to have very interesting contents today. We have a first round table on good practices in Europe, how to rewrite history with equal representation, and then we will hold another activity around financial support in the US market with Deborah Zimmerman, Executive Director of Women Make Movies. But on the 7th, we have more. We have 2 more roundtables. I encourage you to participate at this event too, if you're interested, and I hope you enjoy them. Let's move on to the interesting part. Once again, thank you for coming. Thank you for following us via streaming, and also a special thank you to the Cultural Forum of Austria in Madrid, and also to the US-Spain Council Foundation. Both institutions are making this event possible, and of course to the co-directors of the festival, Diego Mastreyes on the one hand, and Carlota Álvarez Basso, who is here ready to be able to moderate this roundtable. So I'll give you the floor. Thank you. Thank you very much, Pablo. Thank you for being here, everyone. First of all, thank you to Espacio Fundación Telefónica for their support. We're always very comfortable in this context. Also to the Cultural Forum of Austria for their support. We proposed this to Christian, and from the very beginning they were eager to collaborate, and we've grown together in quantity and quality, and we are starting this forum with this roundtable. Thank you to our guests. Since I first heard about the Calliope programs, I thought it was fascinating and one of the most interesting ones in Europe to be able to visibilize the presence of women along history in the country, in the different cultural spheres, not only with regard to the present and the future, but I'm also interested by its approach towards the past. This is why we have given the roundtable this title, How to Rewrite the Past, the Present and Future. People think that the past cannot be changed, but we can change that. We can change the reading and the interpretation that we do of the past, because in the West we women have gained awareness. We live in a culture that has been impacted by patriarchal mechanisms. During centuries, these patriarchal values have been included in many different spheres. But as civil society always goes at the vanguard of economic and legal changes, for the last 8 years, women have taken the stand to be able to demand a higher participation in society and to demand our transition in all the different spheres towards a real inclusion, a real equal representation. The cultural sphere is not an exception to this trend. We are demanding a higher presence of women in all these fields, not only to change the present and the future, but also to rewrite the past. many creators, female creators, have been erased from this past because they were not so present in those times. To be able to talk about these topics, we have three important guests. We have Thomas Kloiber from the Culture section of the Ministry of European and International Affairs of Austria. We also have Stefania Pitscheider, Director of Women's Museum of Hittisau in Austria, and Sabine Fellner, Art Historian and Curator of Exhibitions. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your names properly. Thomas has studies in theology, and since 2022 he leads the exhibition section of the Culture section of the Ministry of Europe and International Affairs. He is also co-director of the international section. He's in charge of the implementation of the program of Calliope Join Dots from the Federal Ministry since 2022. Stefania holds since 2009 the position of Director of Women's Museum of Hittisau. She's worked in other organizations in Vienna, for instance, and also in the Collaboration Institute of Luxembourg. As culture manager, she focuses her interest in political, social matters and feminist matters. Sabine is an art historian. She's a curator. She's also a creator. And she's a promoter of Austrian artists who have been unjustly forgotten. She's organized interesting events everywhere in the world, giving special focus to women and touching upon childhood, pregnancy, etc. With this brief introduction, I would like to welcome all of you. They are going to be making a presentation. I will start by giving you the floor, Thomas, or either of you, so that you can talk about this fascinating project that we'd really like to hear about. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carlota. Thank you to Telefónica and also the Madrid Films by Women Festival for this invitation and for giving us the opportunity of presenting the program Calliope Join the Dots. I'm going to continue speaking in German because my Spanish is not good enough to be able to make a full presentation. Before presenting our program Calliope Join the Dots, I would like to take this opportunity to be able to express our condolences to family members of the victims of the catastrophe that has occurred in Valencia. Well, women equality, protection of women's rights, and taking into account the needs of women and girls are part of the specific objectives that have been set within the politics of the Austrian government. We are based on cooperation, humanitarian aid, thirdly, initiatives that have to do with human rights, and finally, cultural collaboration. These are the four pillars of our foreign politics. Calliope is part of the last one. This Ministry of European and International Affairs, we have designed a program to be able to support women. We have different international agreements that have been signed by Austria. We participate actively by implementing practical initiatives and also by participating in the initiatives launched by other countries. On the one hand, we're talking about the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. For the first time in 25 years, we are members. From 2025 onwards, we will be participating at this convention with other NGOs. It is an important instrument to be able to eliminate the discrimination against women. This convention is also related to fighting all sorts of discriminations. It is an initiative by United Nations. This convention has been signed by Austria together with the additional protocol, and we will continue signing future versions of this convention. Then we also have worldwide conferences on women. Next year, some of them will be celebrating anniversaries. It will be the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. This declaration and platform was launched 30 years ago, and Austria, through its government, is prepared for this anniversary. This year we participated at a dialogue among interested parties to be able to coordinate all different events with regard to the anniversary of this declaration and platform. Finally, we have the 2030 agenda. We also have sustainability objectives that will be celebrating their 10th anniversary next year. They were launched in 2015. We have objective number 5, equality of rights among women and young women, and also the latest report on the implementation of different initiatives to be able to reach these objectives. The report has just been issued. Within this report, we state the different efforts that have been carried out up to now, and also room for improvement. With regard to the development cooperation projects, 90% of these projects include women and young girls' interests. For instance, financial support, humanitarian support. We also have a humanitarian fund for women and young girls in Austria. It has just increased its contribution from 5 to 9 million. We also have an agency that gathers 44% of these projects, totaling 71 million. We're talking about projects that aim at protecting women against gender violence. We also have humanitarian aid that has been increased to be able to reach different regions in crisis. 15 million for Ukraine, 5 million for Afghanistan. Gender mainstreaming is important to us, and at the ministry we also have to be critical with regard to what we are doing. How do we implement these policies at home, specifically when it comes to recruitment, admissions? Nowadays, 76% of young diplomats are women. We also have a strong participation of women with regard to the management of Cultural Forum. Out of 31, 18 have a female director. And also with regard to other organizations, there's a strong presence of women. The cabinet of the Prime Minister is being led by a woman, so we have women in key positions. As for cultural projects, we are trying to reach a balance in terms of gender. Since the creation of Calliope, Join the Dots, we've been able to support an additional 1% of female creators abroad. It is a confirmed figure. We can demonstrate this increase, and we are reaching almost 50%. As for the presence of women in art, culture, and science, this is part of one of the 7 main topics of our foreign culture policies. It is a firm commitment. And as you can see, other topics are also related to the presence of women. We also promote it with regard to digitization. Not long ago, we opened an exhibition devoted to female AI. We tried to have a cross-cutting approach with regard to women's presence. Of course, we also want to have equality programs being strong in Austria. With Calliope Join the Dots, we have achieved certain objectives. Before we had Calliope Austria, Women in Society, Culture and Science. In this case, it was an exhibition based on the idea that history has been written by men. Women, even if they have been very important, have been underrepresented unjustly. We have in Austria great women. We've created a catalogue of 147 exceptional women. And this was the foundation of the exhibition. Exhibition only talked about 42 of these women due to lack of space. But then we launched Calliope, Join the Dots, the Muse of Wisdom. And right now it is the name of the most recent program that we have launched together with the Women's Museum. Here we have a picture of Hedy Lamarr. I think she's also well known here. She was a Hollywood actress. She was also an inventor. She invented a scientific procedure as, among other things, these programs are implemented in practice. We also have Berta von Suttner, the Nobel Prize winner. She was very important for the history of our country. Just to give you 2 examples of women present in this historic exhibition. Coming back to the present, we looked for a partner for these projects, and the partner is the Women's Museum that will now be presented by my colleague. Thank you very much. That's all I can say in Spanish. As Thomas said, 3 or 4 years ago, we launched this project. The ministry reached out and it really matched what we were doing in those times in our organization with regard to the history of women. The history of women has been told by men for many years, so it is a forgotten, marginalized history, and in some cases even eliminated. With our projects, we try to give visibility to women. And we also have to look at pain points. Where do we need more equality and where can we improve? There's still a lot to do, as we all know. Just by looking by the number of women assassinated in Austria and Spain, these figures are very representative. Going back to Thomas' presentation, I want to show you this teaser, this short film that talks about our project. Let's have a look.
Climate and sustainability, migration and inclusion, digitalization.
Migration, inclusion, digitization, science. These elements join women, but we have many connections that we can provide.
Of Austria. Join the dots.
This is a project that is evolving. We integrate more and more women in Join the Dots Calliope. Yes, okay, shall we continue?
Ja. In diesem Programm sind mittlerweile gut über zwischen 80 und 90 Frauen sichtbar.
Within this program, we can see between 80 and 90 women present in these different fields. We're talking about different topics. Women are assigned to these categories. We have a web page that you can visit, and you can read about women that inspire, that motivate, that have had a strong influence on Austria. But we're not only talking about women with an Austrian passport, we're also talking about women who live in Austria or have a close relationship with the country. They have been called upon an internal mission to be able to be Calliopes, to be muses, to inspire other people. For this reason, we believe in this concept of Calliope. We think that this metaphor is highly inspiring. We are really glad to have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs making this possible. For us, it is a museum. It is the only museum of women. There are quite a few organizations like this worldwide, but this one is quite special. It is in a rural area, in a small city, and we can work on the feminist culture in the rural sphere. It is a true challenge. We have 25 women working at this women's museum. It is a diverse team. The youngest woman is 17 and the oldest was 88. She has just retired from Morocco, from Syria, from nearby villages. One has studied, the other is a historian, and another one works at a farm. They all have the same dignity, the same function. They all interact with the public. It is very important. And it is a great foundation for what Calliope is. We don't say, "Who are you? What have you studied?" when somebody comes up to us. we ask, are you willing to analyze these topics? Carla Luna is one of the Austrian founders. She said this: all woman is transformed when she realizes that she has her own story. We all have our own story, and we want to make it visible. As I said, it is about making this history visible, without forgetting that many women are facing hardships worldwide. We need to have a cross-cutting and inclusive approach. Here you have some images of different exhibitions that we have held. We have the 100th anniversary of the International Women's Day. We also show information on different people. We have the Vorarlberg representative. We also focus on the region. We're talking about a mountainous area, and we also had a collaboration with Tanzania and with the Liechtenstein University to be able to better understand the competencies of Maasai women as building masters. This exhibition focused on the 100-year of female vote, 100 years in Austria, in Spain. I think it was later. We've also held a project with the Casa de Culturas of Barcelona. We have also looked into darker chapters in the history of the country. We're talking about salvation marriages for female Jews during the Nazi period. And then we also have another exhibition. We held it on cleanliness. This has to do with the environment, with racism, with many, many topics, because everything is about order and chaos. In this case, it was classicism, the red line. Sexuality as an instrument. These are different topics that we have been focusing on. We have 5 main topics: women in culture and society, women in climate and sustainability, equality and gender, of course, LGBTQI groups, digitization and science. It is another one of our pillars. And finally, migration, among others. All these projects are organized with regard to the 17 SDGs, and some of them, for example, number 5, number 10, have to do with the lives of women, but it is always a cross-cutting approach.
And this should touch on all these themes. As you can see here, there's the Instagram handle, Calliope.at is the website.
Zeigen kann.
Let's have a brief look at the website.
Link, oder?
Mhm.
Okay. Aber das können wir, ja.
Ja.
Doch, jetzt geht's. Oder? Ja.
Ja. Mhm.
Vielleicht kann man oben auf Women gehen und dann sieht man in etwa, bekommt man eine gute Vorstellung, wohin es geht. Wir können gleich auf Sabine Fellner gehen, würde ich vorschlagen.
Let's hear Sabine Fellner. Is that possible, please? We already saw that, that's all right, but maybe at the top we can look into women, the women tab, society and culture. So here we have a rapper, Yasmin. We have a journalist here, Kavachati. In the interconfessional dialogue, composers, Lily Hollin is the director of Applied Art Museum. We have a great musician here, Sabine Fellner. That's the woman I was looking for. And maybe can you click on Sabine Fellner so that we can see the structure of the website? I invite you to have a look at these pages, to just submerge yourself into the lives of these women in this website of ours. It might look easy, but it takes a lot of work. Nothing that you see on that website is... Everything that you see in that website has been already agreed with Calliope, with the woman in question. And it's not only about these women, it's for these women too. And I will give you an outlook, if you can get out of that tab and go back to the home page. So on the one hand, many things are happening in the digital area, but we're always looking for an exhibition that we can move around and that can be replicated quite easily, because we have this basic principle of the greatest sustainability of all our projects. So we wanted it to be a modular exhibition that was adapted to each space and that can be also recycled and cheap in terms of production. So we found different options. We have the designer Sabrina Suma, who has given us these displays where we can show the Calliope project women, but always within the context of the local women, because there's always an exchange. I don't know if Thomas wanted to add something. Yes, we have thought that the different cultural areas at an international level can do a selection of the different Calliopes that exist, and we cannot obviously display all the works, but it is an option to incorporate women from different places into this exhibition in order to attract more interest towards the location, towards that audience. This is why we have created this modular exhibition. So on the right-hand side, you can see the portraits, the colored circles. You can see in them the pictures of the women, and there's a backside to them where there are more explanations. So we can incorporate these exhibitions to local areas and local places, and it can have different realizations. Of course, and it is also about the different frameworks that we encounter in terms of funding, for instance. So there's also a very simple and very easy to replicate version. As you can see here on the screen, you can see the fans, the hand fans that you can use either separately or all together. And these are exactly that, hand fans, but they look a bit like circles. But you can carry those anywhere. You can hand them out. You can collect them back again. It's about giving something to the people that they can take away with them. I will leave the floor now to Sabine. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good evening. I'm very sorry that I don't speak Spanish, but I wanted to thank you for the invitation. for allowing me to speak as a Calliope, my work here. As Thomas has said, I am an art historian. I'm also a curator and also an author. I mainly do research in two areas. On the one hand, I focus my work in rediscovering artists, women artists, and I have theme exhibitions related to important topics from the socio-political perspective. I would also like to touch on the past. One of the themes that we touched on was forgotten artists, women artists, who had played an important role between 1900 and 1938 in Austria, and that were lately forgotten after 1945. And I wanted to rediscover these women. This exhibition was called The City of Women. And this took place in the Belvedere Museum and Castle, and it was a great success in 2019 because the artists we portrayed that had exchanges with people as relevant as Gustav Klimt were actually unknown to the general public. The surprising thing about all this is that those women around the 1920s were actually stars in the Viennese scene. They presented exhibitions in Hamburg and many prestigious venues. When the National Socialism came to Austria, they were completely erased from the scene. You can see here the exhibition in the Belvedere Museum in Austria, and something that was impressive is that from the very first hall, we could see sculptures as these. These sculptures were made by a female artist who made herself a name among many men. Women back then in the 1920s could not study, could not have official studies in art. So this artist was a pioneer who actually managed to make herself a name. Imagine all these long dresses, all these tight dresses that prevented them from working easily and sculpting easily. Gustav Klimt was mentioned in the first exhibition of the Sección. And you can see in the background here work from a second artist, also from Gustav Klimt's closest circle. She participated in important exhibitions, and she also participated in the evening talks, as they were called, in a coffee shop in Vienna, where this group met. And all this has been forgotten, or it has been, they tried to be erased from the art history of the city. So it was very impressive and interesting to me to rediscover these women and being able to document their contribution, their enormous contribution to the development of art in Austria. I think it is important to show that these women were visible, that they actually got the support and the appreciation from their male counterparts. So we are actually correcting history. the history that we have learned about, that we have been told about. There is another exhibition that I'm curating at the moment, is Touch Nature. This is a project that has been promoted by the Ministry of Art of Austria. This is an exhibition that started in Rome in 2021 and that has been in several places, both in the USA and in Europe. It has been recently taken to Paris, and I will discuss Paris a little bit more because it encompasses my interest on many artists, and it also includes certain socio-political aspects. And I was able to speak to the curator of this exhibition, and I was able to put in display only works of female artists. It was all about handling the way art is handling the current climate crisis. This was the exhibition in Paris with 19 female artists, and in all the locations we see Austrian artists who start a dialogue with the host country. This is a view from the inside of the exhibition in Paris. The Cultural Center in Austria does not have its own premises, so we did the exhibition in the Planet Rouge Gallery. As you can see here on the screen, this is the exhibition. What was the concept behind it? The artists are aiming for 4 strategies. We wanted to show how human beings treat the planet nowadays, and to fight against, to protest against this, and to highlight the value of nature and how much it is worth to preserve this nature. And also we wanted to develop the utopias and the visions towards a more respectful treatment of nature and the environment. And this is precisely where women are extremely creative, as we have seen. On the left-hand side, we see a French artist. We also see this strategy as the way the human being handles nature. You can see garbage, and you can see behind it a forest that is dying, and that is sort of in the background. It is also very interesting to highlight the work by Marie-Lise Seiler. You can see there the butterfly very close to the door. She uses grandiose pictures of butterflies, and she places them in strategic locations that the public will have to go through, as we see here at the crossing of the door. So it forces the visitors to step on her images in order to show the way we treat nature nowadays. On the left-hand side, you can see other exhibitions that I will explain later. On the one hand, the Kai books by Nieves Vidauer, and then we have Barbara Ann Hussar's work that are 2 feminist visions. You can also see the sculptures that look sort of exotic. We have a work by Ramona Schneckenberger, a work made with fish skin, and she wants to convey that we need to look at nature's beauties with different eyes and taking our time to appreciate it. On the right-hand side, at the top, you can see a work by Elisabeth van Samsano and also by Titanilla Eisenhardt. She was the one who founded a project that was very interesting, the Country of the Goddesses. She bought a piece of land with other artists, and she uses the space that they have bought together. The land itself is very interesting from the archaeological perspective, because this is where we found the Venus of Willendorf, and Elisabeth von Samsano uses this space for interdisciplinary activities, for archaeological activities, and also cross-cutting activities, in order to highlight how women in the ancestral cultures were very much connected with the landscape. That means modern archaeology has discovered that far from only taking care of the bonfires, they also were hunters and they worked in the farming activities. We see another element within this Country of the Goddesses. This is a movie. And the beauty of this movie is that the reflections, the theoretical reflections of the big thinkers about the ecological crisis can be actually seen in this movie. In this film, she presents a party of the goddesses on a surface of Earth, but regularly the side tries to go inside the upper crust of the Earth in order to identify the bacteria and all sorts of elements and how these elements participate in our ecosystem. She talks about Donna Haraway, who is one of the pioneer researchers in this field, who claims that we need to rethink our relationship with nature. We need to understand that we are in connection with the rest of the living beings, and the human being is not above any of these creatures, but rather intermixed and very much interconnected to the rest of the living beings. So this approach of human beings to the rest of the species, even to living beings that up until now were very much ignored, such as fungi and others, is a topic that is also taken by Judith Wagner and also Monika Pichler, who tries to establish the connection between an existing work of art and algae and weed. Seaweed. There's another work by Barbara Anna Husser. She comes from the region, the very same region, and she explores this with this balloon that has the shape of the udder floating towards the skies in order to tell us that it is high time that the matriarchy moves away from capitalism and brings us closer to nature. She travels with this enormous udder, and she flies above the Alps. The udder is somehow disconnected from the feminine element and receives a new identity. We have another work where we see where glaciers melt, and in all these works we see that there's a search for a female approach to all these topics. And to finish, I wanted to show you the piece of work that is in the poster of the exhibition. It's called Flag 8. Uli Egner is sure that each country is a multinational, multicultural body, and here he has combined 206 flags of different countries to tell us that the sustainable solutions are only to be found beyond our borders. I don't know who wants to take the floor next. Well, to finish and to be more specific, if you wish, and to discuss the activities of other Calliopes, I would like to show you some examples. For instance, we have this project of the Austrian photographer Franz Kreis called Generation Beta. It is a project that has been exhibited in Roma, in Berna. Nowadays, it's in Budapest. And in this project, the author explores the family history of different women, and she tries to understand the relationship between these women and their parents. She records clips of all these conversations and exchanges, and these videos can be seen and heard in this exhibition. In Switzerland, she added an additional element to this exhibition because she wanted to incorporate the topic of violence. And what she did there was she got in touch with a women's prison where she interviewed different inmates, and she incorporated their family histories to her project. A very interesting representative of our project is Waltraud Gruber. She is a film director, and she is the co-founder of Tricky Women, Tricky Realities, which is program that we have displayed in many venues, in many places. It includes animation movies about the fate of women. I would like to ask you specifically a couple of things. Why did this project start? How was the Calliope project born? I don't know who can answer this question. And also, I wanted to ask another question about the Museum of Women. As I said before, for us, this is another tool to give visibility to all these women, and also to explain that it is not about silos of individual things. The second motto, Join the Dots, reflects this. Women and women's equality is a cross-cutting topic, and that can be contemplated with other projects. Who had the idea of, and who had the political motivation to start Calliope? It was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. For this reason, we had this history exhibition where the focus was also on women, and we did not want to leave it at that. We knew that There were so many projects going on with wonderful, extraordinary women, and this is where the idea of joining all these projects together came about. And also, this is where it grew from, because the first mandate was to create a sort of a 2.0 version of the Calliope initial project, but always aiming at giving more visibility. There were already certain collaborations with the ministry and other Calliopes, so the project was started in this way. The Museum of Women History started in the year 2000. I would like to know, why was this created in the first place? And also, I believe that this museum works in a very participatory way, and I would like to understand how this translates in the practice. Well, as I said before, there's always the key aspect of this is how the team of the museum works, and the management team. It is a very diverse team that has an MO that is very participatory. And this is, we were born in the rural areas, and we thought it was important to create a museum of this type there. And my predecessor introduced this project for the first time in the municipality, and we were very surprised that this was immediately approved, probably because they were not aware of what was going to happen afterwards. Probably they thought that we were only going to present folkloric costumes, but this was a starting point, and then we were receiving all sorts of ideas, and they are all accepted in a fair manner. And throughout the years, I have witnessed the story of the women who have been empowered through the realization of their projects that have been accepted by the museum. And this is an example of how important culture is in terms of modifying societies. Regarding art critics, I would like to know what do you think it needs to be done in order to improve women's situation in the field of art, more specifically?
Well, I think that a lot has been done. 10 years ago, we normally had 50 artists in exhibition, and only 5 were female. Nowadays, no curator could do that. The selection of participants, of artists, is always more egalitarian nowadays. This process promotes itself. It is about making women visible, women from the past, to be able to celebrate their achievements. We need to understand the past to be able to design the future. And it is also about
auch in Themenausstellungen zu sehen sein. Dann
giving visibility to active women nowadays, so that they can be part of current exhibitions. With this is a huge collection of women. I think that Thomas wants to add something. Yes, I'd like to add a comment. Not long ago, we celebrated our National Day, and we invited Claudia Lacher, who works with AI to be able to modify historical images. Here, for instance, we have an example. It is a historical image on national contract signed only by men. What does Claudia do? She modifies these images. This can be criticized by saying that these are fake images, but it is about closing the gender gap. These projects are very interesting, and this exhibition will be taken to South Africa in spring. It is a very famous picture of Gustav Klimt with his cat, and now it is Gustava Klimt. And it is very interesting to see this work. The artist says that it is not at all easy. It's not about just saying to ChatGPT, I want a woman instead of a man. You need to train the AI. You need to provide it with data, with resources. If you want to have a diverse approach, it doesn't always work. And sometimes if you ask Asian or other traits, you can end up having pornographic images. And you really have to learn how to manage all these processes. It is a true challenge to be able to avoid having AI taking us backwards. We need to train it properly with intelligence. Yes, of course, we can recover those that were erased by the official history and art history. I wanted to open the floor to questions. I also have other questions, but I was just wondering whether the audience wants to take the floor and ask a question, make a comment. No? If not, I can continue. Yes, over there. We need the microphone to be able to interpret. I'm sorry. Microphone, please. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for presenting the Calliope project. It is super interesting. As a filmmaker, I'm healthily envious about this women's museum in a rural area. I wanted to ask you, yourself or Carlota, if in Spain we have an institute. Well, I know we have the Institute of Women, but I was just wondering about the Museum on Women and the Calliope project. I understand that this is a web page and then the different dots that you've commented on. Does this exist in Spain? Well, I don't know that this exists. We do have different initiatives of web pages organized by women. For instance, Diana Larrea with En Tal Día Como Hoy. She uses examples of women who have left a mark on specific days. Concha Mayordoma has a webpage on female artists. Then there's another webpage on female artists. But we don't have an official page, and we don't have a museum, a specific museum, official museum with this approach. But I do think it is absolutely necessary, and it would be great to have a political initiative to be able to launch a web page. Also looking into the past, talking about women. For instance, the government of Sweden, with regard to the public support provided, this is another very interesting public initiative. When they provide these supports, they support the past, the present, and the future. What does this mean, to subsidize the past or the future? When we talk about the present, we are talking about current existing projects that can have international dissemination. If you're a filmmaker, you have a film, they help you with the subtitles, they help you with the posters, they help you send it to festivals, to travel, because the product is made, the work of art is made and you have to move it around. The support with regard to the future, well, you might have a screenplay and you want to make a film. And when we're talking about aiding the past, it is about supporting the rewriting of the history of the country with equal representation. I think that this would be absolutely necessary. It would be great to have all countries rereading, reinterpreting the past. And this is why this support towards the past is so important. And taking into account that Calliope has started with this, it has been an historical exhibition, a reinterpretation of the past that has led to the current situation, talking about current women, inspiring women, and there's also a governmental mandate to be able to take into account all these women's in different policies and measures. This is great, and these projects should be common and irreversible. We had invited the director of the Institute of Women. She had been invited to this round table, and she had the questions, and she was going to be talking about the Spanish public initiatives with regard to the visibility of women. But sadly, due to the catastrophe in Valencia, the government has declared 3 days of mourning, and she could not participate at this round table. So apologies for that, but I would have liked to hear about the government's initiatives in this field. So maybe next year, during the edition that will be held next year, we will be able to hear about this. We might have a government representative that might want to take the floor in this regard. Yes, I wanted to thank you for the invitation. It is great to see the presence of female artists in the programming. I would like to know about the impact of this initiative. I am convinced that it is very much needed to continue moving forward in this sphere. I work specifically in culture, and I've been reflecting on recent exhibitions during the last 10 years to be able to give visibility to women. We had different exhibitions about males in the Residencia de Estudiantes, different exhibitions. We've also seen other organizations such as the Prado Museum or other museums. It is great to see the titles. We have invited, feared, all of this talking about women. There's also an initiative, the power with which we jump together, about female artists in the 60s and 70s that were not so visible because they did not work in the abstract field, female masters. But we don't have maybe a joint articulation due to also our own distribution of competencies. But we do have initiatives in different organizations organized from the Ministry of Culture, among others. Well, others might be able to talk about this, but we don't have a web page, but in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we are obliged to include in our programs gender matters. In Latin American countries, we're talking about gender measures or initiatives with regard to the social sphere. In other countries, it is more in relation to the cultural sphere. And of course, it is part of development. This would be my question. Which other impact can you mention if we are going to suggest through the Institute of Women, or maybe establishing a collaboration with this initiative, it would be interesting to know about the impact specifically, apart from this increase of percentages, also with regard to the cross-cutting approach to gender matters. To be able to answer you briefly, that 1% was the increase in gender equality, but in terms of absolute figures, how many female artists are being supported abroad? We're talking about an 11% increase between 2022 and 2023. 11%. These are just figures. But I also work at the culture section, and we assess the culture programs in the different embassies, and I do look at the contents of these programs. Since the creation of Calliope, there's a higher awareness in terms of gender, rights of women, protection against gender-based violence. I like sharing this example, and it sometimes makes me cry, but we have adopted an exhibition from the city of Graz, where the migrants from the Silk Route organized an exhibition. There were women from Iran, from China, that traveled through the Silk Road, and these women shared their stories on stage. Texts were in original languages and English. Where did we show this exhibition? Well, first of all, it was showed in Pakistan, then in Istanbul. For me, this is a sign that we do leave a mark with these projects. If we have women sharing these stories in these countries, I think all of this is part of Calliope. I wanted to add a comment with regard to the existence in Spain. We had a project with Creative Europe, and we were interested by the Casa de Cultura of Spain. We found a partner through a contact in Barcelona, and when we have an excellent relationship with Latin American countries. We have an International Association of Women's Museum, and we have about 100 women's museum internationally. But the Hittisau Museum is the only one that is in the rural area. There are very large museums in former Soviet countries, in Vietnam, among others. Some are just starting. In Norway, there's a big museum. In Italy, but Latin American museums, in many cases, go hand in hand with universities.
The city of Mexico, Mexico City has a big museum. There's another one in Buenos Aires, another one in Santiago de Chile. So in the Spanish-speaking world, there are several museums of women that are devoted to this topic. I would like to say that, to me, as a cultural manager, the ideal time would be when all these museums had equality in all fields, and these museums would not need to exist. The Festival of films for women will disappear when there is 50% of film production. Currently, we are very far away from these figures. We're at 23% of films made by women, but we pay 50% of taxes in Spain. We represent 50% of the population, and we aspire to be represented at 50% in all fields. And this is a time where the Festival of Film for Women will no longer exist. And up until then, let's enjoy it thoroughly. I would like to thank all our speakers for their interesting stories, and thank you also to our hosts.